welcome to the local campaign, helping voters make an informed decision for the upcoming municipal election. I'm your host and moderator for tonight's debate, Dan Polishchuk. Tonight we have the Kitchener Ward 8 debate. Kitchener's 8th Ward is located in the northwestern portion of the city, and it is bordered by Highway 8 to the south, Fisher-Hallman Road to the west, Glasgow Street and the Westmount Golf and Country Club in the north, and Belmont Avenue and Meinzinger Park to the east. There are 3 candidates vying for this council seat, and they are James Baskin, Margaret Johnston, and incumbent Zig Janecki. Speaking order was drawn before the debate, so with their 2-minute opening remark, here is James Baskin.
Good evening. I would like to thank Rogers TV for allowing me this opportunity to speak to the people of Ward 8 and all of Kitchener. I worked for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police for 37 plus years. During that period, I received extensive training from investigative techniques, senior police administration to managing budgets in excess of $100,000. I took federal government to financial training, which gave me signing authority for operational needs and procurement. I have convened, chaired meetings with high-ranking officials. I have worked with federal, provincial, and municipal partners, as well as law enforcement from the United States. I have written operational plans outlining requirements of investigations. I have required to make decisions without the benefit of committees. There were times that I was not afforded the luxury of consulting with others. Government officials, I had some serious discussions at times, and I had to make serious decisions. I had received recognition for distinguished service to fellow citizens, their community, and Canada, including representing Canada internationally through foreign service. Also for exceptional merit contributions to policing and community development. I will work towards keeping taxes as low as possible. I will look at affordable housing, youth, seniors, road and sewer infrastructures. The city must set priorities and monitor ongoing projects in order to prevent overrun. I believe in being proactive and setting obtaining goals for Kitchener's future. I strongly believe in honesty, transparency, integrity, and accountability. I will listen to the concerns of the people, as it will be their voice that I will take to council. I feel that I have the experience and qualifications to be on City Council representing the people of Ward 8 and working towards making Kitchener a stronger city. Thank you.
Ms. Margaret Johnston.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan, and thank you to Rogers for hosting our Ward 8 debate. My name is Margaret Johnston, and I'm honored to be running for your City Councillor. Ward 8 deserves positive, collaborative leadership that can get things done at City Hall. I am an experienced elected official, a community builder, business developer, and passionate volunteer. I am ready for this job. I'm a resident of the Westmount neighborhood. I've lived in the ward for 16 years and have raised my 2 wonderful daughters here. I hold degrees in psychology and adult education. Throughout my career, I have used my skills to work with people. I worked in fundraising, sales and relationship management in the not-for-profit and for-profit sectors. I have spent close to 2 decades in the tech sector and at the University of Waterloo. My work at the University of Waterloo in cooperative education enables me to keep on top of all employment and business trends in our region. I work closely with the Waterloo Economic Development Corporation and our local Chamber of Commerce to help companies find talent and be successful. I serve Kitchener as an elected public school board trustee. As many of you know, I ran for City Council in 2014 and came within a few hundred votes. Since then, I've continued to put my community building skills to work in our community. It has been a privilege to work with the Victoria Hills Neighbourhood Association since 2014. And in addition to my work with the VHNA, I was a member of the City of Kitchener Property Standards Committee and am now a member of the City of Kitchener Economic Development Advisory Council. I am committed to this ward and this city. I have the education, the background, and the skills to be a positive, energetic, collaborative councillor. We deserve leadership that knows how to build bridges to move our community forward. I know I am up to the task.
Mr. Janecki.
Yeah, thank you very much for Rogers hosting this evening. My name is Zig Janecki. What I give you is 45 years of municipal experience, 28 years as a city planner at City Hall, 9 years as a municipal planning consultant, and 8 years as your city councillor. I've sat on numerous committees and some as chair, including Heritage Kitchener, Committee of Adjustment, Planning Strategic Committee, Center in the Square, Belmont Village BIA, Waterloo Regional Heritage Foundation, and others. I've written hundreds of staff reports and prepared numerous amending zoning bylaws for city councilors. Over the years, I have been involved in the preparation of the city's official plan, zoning bylaw, and development charges bylaw. As a city councilor, I have opposed several budgets in my term as they were above inflation at the time, especially in the budgets earlier in my terms approved at 8.9%, which includes the stormwater management fee. Now, I oppose the stormwater management fee as a user fee, and it's really not a user fee, it's really another rain tax. I did not support the high utility rates increases for stormwater and sanitary at more than 3 times the rate of inflation. I oppose spending of $500,000 on the Cadillac Victoria Park washrooms. However, I also supported residents that successfully achieved their objectives regarding deletion of sidewalks on Glasgow Street, Vista Place, downzoning of nearby properties at Glasgow and Inwood, and preserving existing services on Maple Hill in my ward, and brought about yellow flexi road signs in the middle of the road. Having worked both on the inside of City Hall and seeing how government operates and on the outside as a private consultant, I have excellent handle on seeing various issues from both sides of the fence. With this first-hand experience, I'm able to provide the citizens of Ward 8 with professional expertise. I know my way around City Hall and am knowledgeable in all aspects of municipal government.
Thank you all for those opening remarks. To start the question and answer portion of our debate, we now go to Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce Vice President Art Sinclair.
A number of candidates have indicated that more voices in the community have to be heard at council meetings and the decisions that follow. Do you agree that government needs to be more open and transparent?
And on the transparency question, we'll begin with Ms. Johnston.
Yes, thank you so much for that question. That's really, really important to me. I believe that we need more transparency and engagement at City Hall, though I do feel that over the past few years, the city has made strides forward with that, with the engagement policy that staff worked very hard on. I would have supported the engagement policy. I would have voted for that. I believe that we need to have open data for our city, that it would be great if our website was searchable for people. Right now, it's very difficult to look on the City Kitchener website and search council minutes to easily find who voted on what the discussion was, etc. That's really important for me to make changes to that, and I will make some motions to that when I'm on City Council. People want an engaged councillor, so they want to be engaged with the city. When I go door to door, I'm hearing from people that they want to know more about what is going on at City Hall. One thing that I'm planning on doing is to have regular meetings with our constituency to give them an update on what is going on at City Hall. So I look forward to the opportunity to do that.
Mr. Yanetsky, would you agree that more transparency is required at City Hall?
Well, City Kitchener right now is quite transparent, and I've been quite interested in that particular topic since I was elected back 8 years ago. Of course, there are certain transparencies that have to be done confidentially, that is done in caucus, dealing with wages or purchasing of land. Those issues have to be sort of done in caucus before they become public, and eventually they are done public. Other issues pertaining to development of the city, I feel it's quite important that the public has input into it, whether it's through Compass Kitchener, through public meetings and a variety of open houses is one way of trying to do it. Staff has gone ahead and provided information as best as they can and is available, and I want to make sure, having been a staff person myself, knowing what's basically available behind the scenes, that it should be brought forward. And I question staff at times on their information that is not quite available totally to the public. I am quite aware of the other opportunities that is available to the public. They can appear at city council meetings. It's more transparent than provincial and federal governments. We are not allowed to appear. Here in Kitchener, it's the most closest piece of government that you can have that allows you to be vocal and also to meet with your councillors on a daily basis. Because on the provincial and federal level, they're either in Ottawa or they're at Queen's Park. We are here locally, and we have the opportunity to meet on them on a daily basis. And I have an open door policy to speak with anybody 24/7.
And lastly, Mr. Baskin, your thoughts on the transparency question?
I agree with Margaret and Zig that there needs to be more transparency. I've had occasion to have people ask me what's going on in their neighborhood and what's going to be done. I can recount an issue where there was road construction. There was no notice given to the residents in that area. It was done by way of a letter from Coco Paving with 2-week notice that there's going to be road construction. So that's quite a big indicator that there was no transparency from the City Hall, and it was quite a surprise to the people. And it was like, it was very difficult to find out what the rationale was behind it. So it took several attempts to get the information as to what was happening. I think that the information gathering on the website should be a little easier for the residents. Some people say they have a hard time going on the Kitchener site to find out information. And I have had calls at home already asking questions about what's going on in some areas. So yes, there needs to be more information given out to the constituents, so at least they can plan and know what's going on, and that they're not going to lose the frontage on their houses. There's going to be a disruption to the roads in their neighborhood. Again, like I said, 2-week notice from Coco Paving wasn't sufficient for the community, and it was difficult to get the answers to that. Thank you.
Thank you for those responses. Speaking of neighborhood awareness, what kind of additional community programming would you like to see in your ward, in Ward 8 specifically? Mr. Unetsky, you have the first crack at a response.
The city already provides a number of programs through, and one of the latest basically has been the Neighborhood Day, and involvement with of my hood, basically as it's termed. We provide that as citywide as well as in my ward. Basically is to engage the various neighborhoods in my ward to have get-togethers, whether it's a barbecue or a picnic or gathering with music, fun for the whole family. And that has been quite successful. That has been a leader in terms of where the city wants to engage the public, and it's one of those programs that I feel is quite successful, and we want it to grow even more.
What additional programming, just to dig a little deeper, would you like to see in the ward going forward?
Basically, there are certain pockets in the ward that they just want to remain silent. We want to engage them to become involved. Sometimes they become involved because there's an issue that rises in their particular street, whether it's a rezoning or speeding traffic or something of that nature, and then all of a sudden they come together. And then from there, you can get that group and try to have them grow and become more neighborly and more family friendly, and be able to now take advantage of some of the offerings that the city has in terms of the programs.
Okay, and Mr. Baskin, again, stressing what additional community programming would you look at having accessible to citizens and candidates, or rather constituents of Ward 8?
I would certainly be involving the Waterloo Regional Police. They can be present at neighborhood gatherings, functions, to give a presentation of some of the issues that they should look for. Education is high on my list for that area. Such things as identifying vehicles, suspicious people, license plates, activity in certain areas that are accessible to pedestrians. I think policing would be a great start there. If there are bike paths and it has come to the attention that there's some criminal activity or possible criminal activity, possibly put in emergency buttons, if you might call it, that will go to a central dispatch that they can respond to the situation and have immediate response and try and stop the situation before it gets any larger. And
lastly, Ms. Johnson, what additional program would you like to see in Ward 8 going forward?
Thanks, Dan. This is a great question. I've been very involved with the Victoria Hills Neighbourhood Association as well. I've been working with the Westmount Neighbourhood Association and doing some meetings with the Lakeside Neighbourhood Association as well. And I think one thing that people want to see is that they want to know more about the Love My Hood initiative. The Love My Hood initiative is not for Neighbourhood Day. Only. It is a year-long initiative where neighbors and neighborhood associations can partner with, say they can partner with companies for an economic development advisory grant that's available. I think that's a wonderful collaboration. They can, I'd love to see them work more closely with each other. We actually had a debate a couple weeks ago, and the Victoria Hills Neighbourhood Association was able to get in touch with the Westmount Neighbourhood Association to help plan that. And I think that that's really great. We have so many strengths in our ward, but very, very distinct ones in different neighborhoods. I want to make sure that they're brought together, that people know what's going on in one area of the ward and in another area of the ward, that people meet each other and that they're able to work together. I'm really looking forward to that collaboration and to really use the Love My Hood initiative better than it has been used currently.
On the topic of specific neighborhoods in Ward 8, can you identify any of those neighborhoods in the ward that are in need of traffic calming measures? And if so, how would you approach the issue? And Mr. Baskin, first response goes to you.
There are areas that have been identified to me by the constituents as I've been out canvassing. Some of the ideas are to put the calming strips on the roads in strategic areas. The yellow centerpieces, as Mr. Inecki had mentioned. The community has to look at the situation, identify patterns that are happening, especially school zones. We have to look at that to reduce the speed and try and exhibit more caution for the drivers. I think the enforcement of the Waterloo Regional Police should be incorporated into that in areas that are a problem. It will take some planning to do that. I know that they're busy in all different areas, but I think if we have enough information from the community, the constituents, and myself, I would be out there looking to assess the situation and go to the chief or his designate and suggest or ask if they can send patrols in that area to try and reduce the speed of the drivers.
Any specific neighborhoods, though, that you can think of or would highlight that would especially need that addressed?
One area that I've noticed is Forest Hill in the Uplands and Birchcliff area is one particular area that they're concerned about, and that's one area that I will go and sit and observe the traffic pattern there.
And Ms. Johnson, again, any specific neighborhoods in Ward 8 that are in need of traffic calming measures, and how would you approach the issue specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I haven't knocked on doors in one neighborhood where people have not brought up the need to have traffic calming and traffic slowing. So I'm proposing that non-arterial roads in Kitchener have a 40-kilometer speed limit. I think that that is going to be a great start. When we had that debate a couple weeks ago that I was mentioning, 3 of the questions out of 10 were around traffic on Westmount Road. Westmount Road has become a speedway, and it's all ends of it. So this year, in front of Forest Hill School, a crossing guard was hit while trying to cross kids across the road, and that's become a major safety concern. Also around Westmount and Union Boulevard, that's a huge area of concern. There's been a couple of houses hit by cars in the last couple of years, and Westmount and Glasgow as well. But what's happening with that is it's pushing cars. People don't want to travel through those intersections, so it's pushing them onto arterial roads. People will go down Inwood Crescent and over to access their homes on Glasgow. So it's a problem everywhere, and we need to look at speed reduction. We need to look at a variety of other traffic calming measures, but to work in conjunction with the traffic engineers. I want to look at this through using data, evidence-based data. I want to hear from our engineers, and let's make good decisions, not just based on neighborhoods. Well, based on neighborhoods, but based on the good information that we're able to get through evidence.
And which Ward 8 neighborhoods specifically are in need of traffic calming measures in your perspective, Mr. Yanetsky, and how would you approach the issue?
Well, that's a very good question. I have to agree with my two candidates here as well. I have received many phone calls from different streets, basically through streets. Cul-de-sacs, they're not an issue. But basically the crescents and drives that are in my ward have become really a sort of a sneak through to avoid the major arterial roads like westbound or Fisher-Holman. And of course, those two roads are major arterial roadways run by the region, and in my communication with them, they indicate their purpose of those particular streets is to move traffic. Of course, they have got to do within a limit of the speed limits, but they're to move traffic from one point of the city to another, and that's their purpose. But because there are tie-ups and traffic lights and the slowdowns, people who are in a hurry try to cut through the neighborhoods, especially in the westbound area, using Union and other streets, Claremont, as well as even in Forest Hill, using Lakeside and Blue Ridge and a few other streets. So what we have tried to do is try to bring in traffic calming. There is a list of about 145 streets citywide that are on that list for traffic calming purposes that have been identified with traffic. We only do about 3 or 4 a year. I'm trying to increase it, but it costs and it takes time. And then, of course, there's consultation with the residents for that to happen. And of course, with traffic calming, you get speed humps, you get reduced island widths, etc. So that's one way of doing it. I've also brought along flexi signs when I've worked with traffic to implement them. People have approached me and saying they think they're great, they work, and so I've ordered more for next year to bring them about. And plus that, to conclude, I have also talked with traffic to have brought forward next year reducing all speed limits from 50 to 40 on local streets. So that's in the works.
Thank you for those responses. From our roads, we now focus more on our paths and trails. So how would you approach the growth or maintenance of Ward 8's parks and trails over the next 4 years? And Ms. Johnson, first response to you.
Yeah, that's a great question as well. Thank you. I am an active user of parks in our ward. I have a dog, so we're active pedestrians, and often you can find us at Lakeside Park and walking around various areas in the ward. The biggest issue with trails is that they need to connect. So when people are riding bikes, we need to make sure that as part of the cycling master plan that the region is working on as well, is that things connect and it makes sense. I'm also aware that in the wintertime, some of our trails are not maintained, and that is a problem. We need to make sure that places like Concordia Park are cleared and that people can walk through there. So I'm hearing that a lot from neighbors as well. And we need to make sure that our community is always available for active transportation. People want to get out and enjoy our parks. I'm thrilled actually to see the new Evergreen Park that was put in at Soski Park, for instance. But we need maintenance of our trails so that people will be able to use those year round.
Mr. Yanetsky, your thoughts on maintaining or growing parks and trails in Ward 8?
Well, we have a plan that allows for the growth of that has been established by staff and approved by council. It costs money to put trails in, and we've allocated hundreds of thousands of dollars every year for its purposes. Now, there's two issues of trail parks. One is, are they going to be asphalted or are they going to be stone dust? If they're stone dust, they become an issue in terms of maintenance during the winter, and that's why some of them are not maintained. Also, you have to look where the trails lead to. Are they school routes for children to get from one part of a neighborhood to another to get to school, or are they connecting links to bus stops, etc.? They are plowed and maintained by the city. Those that are not have to be addressed as well, but then you're going to have to surface them because the equipment that's needed ruins the trail system, the stone dust, and then more cost in the end to fix it. So that's a thing that's got to be looked at. There's also missing links, I should point out, in the trail link system that can't be completed. We want to have them completed, but they're on private lands. And some of those connections, especially along the Grand River is a good example, are missing links. And we want to get that. It's been in the works for many, many years, in fact, for several decades. But do you expropriate that from the property owners, or do you wait for land development to take place, or do they offer and sell it to the city? So those are things that have been ongoing for many, many years, and the objective is to provide a total network, but sometimes it just takes time.
And Mr. Baskin, your approach to the growth or maintenance of Ward 8's parks and trails over the next 4 years?
I feel that the maintenance of blacktopping the trails would be beneficial in the long run. The people want alternate means of transportation. If they have that in place and it can be maintained all year round, so much the better. So we would have to absorb the cost through the budgeting and make sure that is done. If there's any possible way of linking all the trails, I don't know if the landowners would lease part of their land to run the trails and link them. That might be an option, but I don't think we should spare any expense in blacktopping those trails, because it would certainly increase the number of cyclists, joggers, walkers, strollers. There's no way that you can put a limit on that one. That just means that we're going to be enhancing our capability of moving people around the city without having to use buses, cars, whatever. But and it's for the health reason. I think that's the best option, is for people to get out and actually use the trails.
So taking a closer look at City Council now, do you believe Council has been fiscally responsible? And regardless of your position, how would you specifically ensure that it is financially responsible going forward? And Mr. Yanetsky, first response to you.
Well, it's a matter of opinion as to whether Council has been respectfully physically responsible. It all depends on how you vote on the budget items and which budget items you want to have in there. Of course, in the last budget, our taxes for 2018 was at a rate of 1.7%, which is pretty good. It was under the rate of inflation. However, the user fees and the fees associated with the stormwater management, sanitary sewer, water, those service rates, they were up at 6, 7, 8%, 10%, depending on which category you're talking about. So it all depends on how much money you want to spend on improving the systems. And of course, staff come back and say that we'd have an accelerated program. The system is falling apart. Of course, a lot of the lands and underground services have been built at post-World War II, which now they're reaching the age of replacement, basically. So do you accelerate and then spend more money? Yeah, you could. But on the other hand, we also find statistically that the products that are used and the system that has been put in could last another 10 or 20 years. On items of tendering, as a good example, sometimes we just go through the budget and just approved 1, 2, 3 on tendering items, and we're spending $500,000 here and $250,000 there without any questions asked. And there's one or two of us that ask questions: why are we spending this? Can't we delay this? Or isn't there a better way of doing it? And so I feel that to a certain degree, Council is not fiscally responsible, although some councillors may say yes and some say no, and I'm one of those that do question it.
Mr. Baskin, your perspective on Council's fiscal responsibility and level of responsibility thus far, and how would you, again, specifically ensure its financial responsibility going forward?
I think there will be varying opinions of whether they're fiscally responsible on their budgets. There are, being a citizen, I've seen areas that work has been done which I really couldn't see a necessary reason for it. But then I'm not there to see what the process is. There's probably ways that they can work around things. The tendering process, did they go out to 1, 2, 3 people or companies for bidding? The work's got to be done, but they have to set priorities and stay with those priorities. Set a attainable time frame that they can get the work done. If there are other issues, then they can start working on priorities while the major projects are being completed. If they don't have priorities, I don't know how they can control what's going on. Like Mr. Yanecki said, that there's $200,000, $300,000 going here and there for projects. Are they priorities? Are they necessary at this point in time? And I do agree with the washroom facility in Victoria Park. Was that necessary at that great expense? Because now it's being pretty beat up by some of the people that hang around that area. So it's an expensive project, only to be destroyed, damaged, and these are issues that have to be looked at and controlled. And again, the word priority comes to mind, and if you have that, you stay on an even keel. Thank you.
And Ms. Johnston, how would you assess Council's level of fiscal responsibility, and has it been, and how will you ensure that it is going forward?
Thank you. You know, there's a good saying out there that the best way to tell what the priority of a council is to see what they're spending their money on. And you can pay lip service to many things, but your priorities are where you spend your money. And I'm very careful with how I spend my money. As a public school board trustee, we had to have a balanced budget every single year, and I helped our board live within that budget, and I'm going to do the same thing on City Council. There's some initiatives, though, that I think are very important for our neighborhoods. And as I'm going door to door, I hear from people about infrastructure being really important to them. There's some neighbors that have said that their road was supposed to have been resurfaced and paved, and the sewers and that fixed up to 10 years ago. That's a long time for people to wait. So I think that they're interested in spending money on that. And one thing that I would say about that as well is that we need to make sure that we are advocating with AMO, with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities to make sure that we're going to be getting our fair share of infrastructure money. Right now, we're getting 6% of every dollar, yet, 8% of every dollar, and we're responsible for 60% of the infrastructure costs at the municipal level. And I'd also like to point out that we, as councillors, we're one of 11 people around the table. So we have to make decisions together, and that's where I can work collaboratively with people. But the one thing that we have personal responsibility on is our own personal expenses. And I'd like to point out that the incumbent here, for the past 8 years, has had the highest personal expenses of every single councillor every year.
And we'll actually, before we go to our next question, allow for a rebuttal here from Mr. Yanitsky on that point.
I have to disagree. I don't have the highest. I do have, I've spent quite a bit of money because you're encouraged to go to conferences. You're encouraged to have computer equipment to use at home so you can communicate. If you didn't have that, you wouldn't be able to do any communication in terms of having these expenses. You're allowed an allocation, and staff encourage you to use it. Otherwise, it doesn't get spent. On conferences, yes, I have gone to several conferences, and I've benefited because I'm there with the mayor and other councillors, whether it's the AMO or the FCM, and they're great learning experiences, especially the last one I was at, dealing with the transformation of the OMB to the LPAT new system of appeals.
Ms. Johnston, a quick reaction. How would you respond to that explanation?
I've done the math. Many people have done the math, and Mr. Yanitsky does have the highest expenses, and you can look on the City of Kitchener site under the Freedom of Information, and you will see that as well.
Mr. Yanitsky, final word on that point?
I'm not going to rebut it because you're encouraged to use it. And that's the only way you can learn, by going to these conferences, because they want you to attend and learn. And that's the whole purpose of having that. And the only way to do it is to attend.
All right, moving on to the next question, and it regards the biggest issue facing Ward 8, what you believe is the biggest issue facing Ward 8, and how you would address it if elected. And Mr. Baskin, first response to you on that.
I think transportation is a major issue. The ION is behind on its implementation date. There are areas that buses have been removed from certain communities. And I think the City of Kitchener, in concert with Ward 8, should be looking at increasing the GO train schedules to Toronto. It would help to alleviate a lot of the traffic, stress on families. So I think the transportation issue is a big concern, and on that as well as the road, sewer, water infrastructure. Those should be priorities.
Ms. Johnston, number one issue facing Ward 8, and how would you address it if elected?
Right. Well, when I'm knocking on doors, I'd say that I'm often hearing that we need a change. We need a change in leadership at the ward level, at the councillor level. That would be the top issue at the door. We need a councillor who can build bridges across the community with all different parts of our neighborhoods and people that live there. And basically that we don't need more of the same, we need change.
Mr. Yanetsky, number one issue facing Ward 8.
Well, the number one issue basically is, as an established ward, having been built basically over half a century ago, is the traffic issue that runs through the neighborhoods, especially when you're not using the major arterial roadways. The traffic calming, as I pointed out earlier, is a highly requested way of controlling traffic. The flexi signs, I'm working on that. I've already implemented some and more to come. So that becomes the number one issue. And right behind it is the infrastructure, because, again, we were built back over half a century ago, or even 70, 75 years ago. The underground infrastructure services are starting to slowly deteriorate, and people are asking for their streets to be considered. But we have to look at the city as a whole, because some areas are worse than mine, and they're much older. So it works on a priority system, and it's on a point system as well, that they're ranked, but they try to spread it throughout the city that everybody gets a portion of it as well. And it is being done. And I work with staff quite closely on that to make sure that my constituents get their fair share.
Now, in your broader role as a councillor, what would you do specifically to address homelessness and addiction in the city of Kitchener? And Ms. Johnston, we'll begin with yourself.
Okay, thank you. Well, this is certainly not an easy problem to solve. And if it was, we would have solved it by now. I'd say that in some ways that Kitchener is a victim of its own success. That we have a thriving tech sector. We have lots of companies here that are looking for talent. And that really has caused a crunch for people looking for housing. As mentioned before, I sit on the City of Kitchener Economic Development Council, and we just had a report last week from our staff regarding affordable housing, because not only is it a problem for people who are looking for affordable housing, it's become a problem for our business owners who are having a hard time having their staff be able to afford to live here in our city, and that's a major issue. So we need to make sure that we're partnering. We need to partner with the region on this. We need to partner with not-for-profits, and we definitely need to be partnering with our developers. And there's incentives that are available or that are suggested that we're looking at for developers to build more affordable housing, and that would be to waive the development charges until occupancy happens, and that would be to build for up to 20% of affordable housing within new developments, and I certainly agree with that. The region also has a great rebate that's available for people who want to put a secondary suite into their homes. Gives them $25,000 to do that if they're going to provide affordable housing in their homes. So there's some great ideas out there, and we need to be creative about this and work together.
And Mr. Yanetsky, how would you address the homelessness and addiction issue in Kitchener?
Well, homelessness issue is a significant concern, and to address it, we already have programs in place to help out those that are homeless. There's Mary's Place, there's the House of Friendship, and others. Although they are encouraged to go there and have the accommodation, they have to follow rules, and that becomes a challenge for them, because you have to be embedded, no drugs, no smoking, and other rules that they have. So as a result of that, they rebel and don't want to be living in a controlled environment, and want to be on their own, so they prefer living on the street, and that's unfortunate. In regard to affordable housing, we need it. We do have a program established with the region on that. When we go through a planning process to bring new development on stream, there's no legislation under the Planning Act or the Municipal Act that compels the developer or the builder to provide it. The only way we can do it is through encouragement. We can do it through bonusing, through the planning process and the zoning bylaw, and try to work that way. And if the developer does not want to do it, you can't compel them. If they refuse, if you want to refuse for approving the application, they can take you to Ontario Municipal Board, and it's really an unfortunate loss because they'll win because you're using something that's not under the Planning Act to hold back their development. So from affordable housing, also you have to look in terms of what's the limit in terms of dollars and cents on being affordable. Is it for a single person, a couple, or a family of 4? Each one has a certain rate, and the higher the rate, the bigger the family is. And then what kind of accommodation do you need? Now, of course, wages have gone up so much over the last 10 years, but housing has gone up considerably more. So it's not caught up to being able to afford the accommodations, and there's the impact from Toronto as well that has brought residents here, and it's just a continuous evolving problem that's quite difficult to address, but we're working on it.
And how would you, Mr. Baskin, address homelessness and addiction in the city as it currently is?
The homeless people can go to overnight accommodations, but has anyone taken a step towards asking them, what kind of a background do you have? Do you have a trade? Do you have abilities to maybe want to learn and improve your lifestyle? If they had counselors that could establish that, I think that would be the first step. We may be able to rescue 1 or 2, 3 people off the street. It'll be baby steps at first, but if we identify the background of people and their eagerness to want to work, there's some that probably do want to work, but have they been given the opportunity to actually demonstrate their abilities and capabilities, or even offered to receive training? Addiction, that's always going to be a sore spot in any district situation, cities, towns, communities. Again, working with law enforcement, we have to deal with it. There's other ways of investigating the importation, distribution of drugs in the area. And for affordable housing, maybe we should be looking at partners and partnering up with companies, developers, and saying, okay, do we have any vacant buildings that we can use to accommodate the homeless? Those who don't want to live by the rules that are afforded them at the residences, maybe we should sit down and ask them what they would like to do. They may say no, well then you have your answer, but try and proceed with the ones who are interested in moving forward and improving their lifestyle. Thank you.
In extending the discussion of about those who deal with addiction, how would you support the development, or would you support the development of a safe injection site in Kitchener? And if so, where would you like to see it located? And Mr. Yanetsky, first response to you.
Yeah, that's a very challenging question, and I've been mulling that over for the last several months as the issue of the opioids and the drug issue just seems to be getting bigger and bigger. And I know the region has been working on it. Of course, the province has been involved as well. The region has established a couple of locations that they were looking at, one on Water Street in Kitchener. They're looking also on Kent Avenue, but that didn't materialize. But these are in areas that are in the core area, more or less, because that's where the issues are basically. And to establish that, wherever you put it, the people who live in the area are basically opposed to it, or have concerns, they don't want it, and that becomes challenging. No matter which area you find, that becomes the issue. I would think that because it's a sort of a municipal issue, whether it's regional or city, we should have the opioid system and have the safe injection sites at City Hall or at the regional head office on Frederick Street. 2 great locations, professional staff is there, security is there, and facilities could be made for them to handle it, and this would be all properly controlled, and of course there's no residences immediately near them that would have any concern about it. So I think those are 2 great locations to have them at.
And Mr. Baskin, with your background in police enforcement, how would you support the development of a safe injection site, as I'm sure you've been witness to a lot of how it affects a lot of individuals? Yes,
to have a safe injection site open to the public, as Mr. Yanetsky was saying, around City Hall in large areas, there will be a stigma attached to the people coming and going that will turn them away from that area, and they'll only go and find different areas where they will use and possibly overdose, and they won't have the assistance to help them along. They have to find an area where they can go There won't be a large crowd around. There's issues of how some of the users will react after they have injected or ingested whatever narcotics they have. They could be violent, they could be passive, they may walk out in front of vehicles. So we have to find a safe area that's not going to have a lot of vehicular traffic, foot traffic, and we definitely have to have people in there that are trained that can help these people, because one of the situations, once they leave that property, who's going to be responsible for their actions if they get hurt or are killed? So we have to look seriously at areas that will accommodate the situation, have counselors there, and see, again, we have to talk with these people and find out what issues are going on. They may not want a response, but at least we've tried, and we can move forward looking for areas. But the case of the one on Water Street, from what I understand, the property was purchased, and there was very little consultation with the residents in that area. So I think we have to talk to the people in the area to find out what their concerns are and proceed from there.
Just to focus in on the point, would you, though, specifically support the development of a safe injection site?
Yes, I would.
In Kitchener?
Yes.
And Ms. Johnson, same question to you. Would you support the development of a safe injection site in Kitchener, and where would you like to see it located?
Yes, thank you. The opioid crisis has seen more people dying by opioid than in car crashes. And between 2015 and 2017, these deaths have increased by over 200%. So it's a huge, huge issue in our community, and these are people's families. So I think that we have to be very careful not to stigmatize people. We need to use a harm reduction approach to the crisis. We need to bring in experts from public health to work together with us on this, and we need to use, in terms of a location, it needs to be done, decided, I think, in consultation with public health, and to use an evidence-based placement. We need to. I can't say where it should be located. We need to hear from the experts in the field on this.
We have time for one more question, and Ms. Johnson, you alluded to the tech sector, but how would you, as candidates, and would you help council to develop a strategy for bringing new and diverse business to the city? And Mr. Baskin, first response to you.
Yes, the tech sector is nice. However, we have other people out there that have different backgrounds on different jobs. One example that was given to me is, at an event, there was a person using a phone that was purchased or manufactured overseas, and it was purchased, it was brought here, and we have to look at the transportation costs to bring it in, the amount of fuel that's going to be used, the traffic on the road to deliver it to Kitchener. When we could possibly do that, why couldn't somebody go to Blackberry and buy locally? I think we have to have an initiative where we can build a commerce and businesses that can build and produce product here, that we don't have to ship it from overseas at a great expense, and of course the impact on the environment through transportation. So we have to look at buying locally, give some initiative or incentives to companies to come in here and develop their product, their line of product, and sell it locally. And I think in order to do that, the city would also have to look at expanding their road systems, so there would be a little easier to get in and out to move their product. So we have to develop a business line to bring more businesses in and start buying locally. That's the big concern.
And Ms. Johnson, what would your strategy for bringing new and diverse business to the city look like?
Yes, thank you for this question. This is actually something that I do as part of my daily job. I work very closely with organizations like the Waterloo Region Economic Development Corporation and the Chamber of Commerce. I will tell you that we do have a lot of non-tech companies that are thriving here, that are finding it very difficult to find talent locally. We have a lot of manufacturing done here. We have a lot of food processors here, and the one thing that they're crying out for all the time is talent at the moment. So that is what I help them with. But along with talent acquisition and with helping those companies thrive, we also need to have affordable housing. We need to make sure that we've got recreation here in the city for them. One thing that I find with my students is that many of them that come from the GTA don't have a driver's license and never plan on getting a driver's license. So we need to make sure that we've got good transit, and that's coming now, and great places for them to be able to ride their bike and use active transportation. I would continue to financially support the Waterloo Region Economic Development Corporation and Communitech. These are two very, very important pieces of the economy here that any other community would be so excited to have them in place here. So we're very lucky. And as well, I think it's very important that we look at the Waterloo-Toronto corridor, and that we're continuing to press the provincial government for better transportation back and forth between Toronto, and that's going to help our local economy thrive.
And Mr. Yanitsky, how would you develop a strategy to bring new and diverse business to the city?
Well, we have a very good tech industry here already, and that's as a result of the BlackBerry starting some 20 years ago. And of course, the tech industry has grown. We have hundreds of startup groups or companies, if you want to call them, that are starting up on a daily basis here, and we have helped them along with some financing from the city as well. Of course, it's a private sector venture, and Communitech and other organizations are growing. We've expanded into the area. Now we've got Google, we've got Desire to Learn, and it's wonderful that the tech industry is located. We've become known as the second Silicon Valley of California. It's now in Ontario. Of course, we're drawing also a lot of people from the Toronto area, and we need two-way GO transit to take place. Again, that's a provincial matter, but we from the city, through our mayor, has been negotiating, trying to get it, and I guess it comes down to dollars and cents before it's implemented. Of course, the businesses that we've had for many, many years have disappeared. Schneider's, Budd Automotive, B.F. Goodrich. These are big employers that have had over the decades, and now they're being replaced. But we still have a very low unemployment rate here. And that's one of the trademarks. We're not focused on one particular industry like Windsor with the automotive sector. We're quite diverse. We have universities, we have housing development that's taking place, and with all the support industries that help that, we're quite diverse, and our employment is quite low. So that provides for good, stable growth and development of the city for the future.
All right, well, thank you all for all those responses during the question and answer portion of tonight's debate. That does bring an end to that section, but we will now move on to closing remarks. Each candidate will now have 2 minutes to provide a closing statement, and for that, we'll begin with the incumbent, Mr. Zig Yanetsky.
Yeah, thank you very much. So in closing, I give you 45 years of municipal experience. So when deciding on who to vote for, remember, vote for the person who's got the best municipal qualifications and experience. I stand and represent for action, dependability, supporting my constituents, and spending taxpayers' money wisely. My records show it. Check my website, zigyanetsky.com, for my many, many endorsements that I've received. Having worked both on the inside of City Hall and seeing how it operates, and on the outside as a private consultant, I have an excellent handle on various issues from both sides of the fence. With this first-hand experience, I'm able to provide my constituents of Ward 8 with professional expertise. I know my way around City Hall and am knowledgeable with every aspect of municipal government. A vote for Zig is a vote for excellent representation in getting things done.
Candidate Margaret Johnston. Thank you. And thank you, Dan, and thank you to Rogers for hosting us this evening. Ward 8 deserves positive, collaborative leadership that can get things done at City Hall. I value equity. This means looking around the table and not only asking who is there, but whose voice is absent. I will always seek out new voices and different perspectives while doing my best to promote evidence-based decision-making. I value accessibility and inclusion. This means advocating for policies and events that allow everyone to enjoy what Kitchener has to offer. Our community is one of the fastest growing in the country, and Ward 8 needs a councillor that can look to the future and will bring real-world experience to the table. I have a decade of experience in the tech sector and close to a decade at the University of Waterloo. I have served Kitchener as an elected school board trustee. I served as vice president of the Victoria Hills Neighbourhood Association. I was a member of the City of Kitchener Property Standards Committee and am now a member of the City of Kitchener Economic Development Advisory Council. I have the energy, enthusiasm, and experience to get the job done. I am proud to have received endorsements from the Waterloo Region Labour Council, the president of the Victoria Hills Neighbourhood Association, local business founders and leaders, and community builders. Ward 8 deserves a councillor who can reach across the table and work with stakeholders from all sectors. I have the ability to encourage and mobilize people for change. I'm excited to take my experience, enthusiasm, and abilities to the council table. Please check out my website, www.margaretjohnston.ca, for further information. And on October 22nd, please vote for Margaret Johnston, a vote for positive, collaborative change. Thank you.
In Canada, James Baskin.
Yes, thank you. I have endorsements. I have endorsements from the federal government in the way of the Queen's Jubilee Medal for my commitment to the communities. I have the Order of Merit for the police forces, which is issued by the Canadian government, for my actions going over and beyond what was required, my commitment to community, youth, and the public in general. I also have, there's one more I had there, but anyways, not important. I have endorsements. I have them at a federal level, I have them internationally. Anyways, you've heard answers from 3 different candidates with different views and expressed opinions. I have had experience in dealing with finances, preparing operational plans and budgets. During my campaigning, I've had questions from the constituents asking, when is anything going to be done? Some are asking why bus routes have been removed, when roads are going to be repaired. What about speeding? These are the questions that have been going on, and for the past 8 years, it seems to be the same questions that come up every year. For some strange reason, I don't know. These are all legitimate concerns. The city must review, rethink, realign these issues, and begin setting priorities. I believe that the main priorities should be identified and set realistic goals to fulfill them. During that period, new priorities should be set dealing with the remaining issues. We must look at alternative means of travel within Kitchener, as well as the region of Waterloo. Look at creating more bike paths to allow people to use bikes as means to get back and forth to work. Look at setting up express bus routes from new developments that will link up with the ION to encourage people to use alternate transportation. I would look at pushing forward with more GO train service to Toronto, which would include the weekend. People are relocating from Toronto to the region of Waterloo, and this just increases the number of vehicles on the road, not to mention the time that people will spend away from their families while fighting traffic. We must also keep in mind maintaining our green space and heritage. As councillor, I would be out meeting with people and discussing issues. In the end, your concerns are my concerns.
Thank you very much for all those closing remarks and for participating in tonight's debate. Make sure to watch Rogers TV on the night of October the 22nd for up-to-date local results. On behalf of the volunteer Rogers TV production crew, producer David Aguirre, I'm Dan Polstruck. Thanks so much for watching.